Hello Internet, welcome back to Thrums to Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. Today I'd like to talk about Fledgling by Octavia E. Butler. This is a novel. Octavia E. Butler is known for science fiction and dystopian novels. This one, though, is a little different. It's published originally in 2005, and it's more like a horror or vampire novel, although whether or not the characters are vampires or whether they are the thing that vampires are based upon in our culture and literature is not fully clear. They certainly don't consider themselves or refer to themselves by the word vampire. So I try to avoid huge spoilers, and I will do that again, but I like to talk about the themes of the books that I discuss on this channel, and in order to do that I'll have to give you some of the context and some of the content of the story. So the book follows a narrator who is called Shori, although she doesn't know this at the beginning of the book. In fact, she doesn't really know anything at the beginning of the book. She wakes up in a cave in enormous pain with scars all over her body, and she kills and eats a couple of animals. And then after a period of what may be some days, she finds her way down to a road where she's picked up by a guy in a car. At the point when this guy picks her up in the car, it becomes clear that she appears to be an elfin young girl, maybe 10 years old. And this kind of made me uncomfortable because he very quickly shows a certain erotic interest in her. But it then becomes clear before too long that this is very normal for her species. They all have some venom in their teeth, and when they bite you, it creates a sort of erotic bond. And she's not actually 10 years old. It transpires that she's over 50 years old. She is older than him, but she's young for her species. So essentially, the book follows Shori as she attempts to understand who she is, what has happened to her. It transpires early that she came from a community near to this cave, which has been burnt down, and it seems that she's in some danger. She is a creature called an inner who needs to feed on human blood, but has ethics, tries not to kill humans, but rather feeds on several humans at once. And these creatures tend to gather a kind of group of humans around them who bond to them, and they use them in a sort of symbiotic relationship, but where the inner is certainly the dominant figure. In this, Butler is exploring one of the major themes of the book, which is power. Although Shori is a likeable, sympathetic, and apparently very ethical central character, there is some lack of clarity around the extent to which the humans that come into contact with these creatures can actually reject them. They exert such a pull over people, and particularly Shori, as a very powerful female, exerts such a pull that it's difficult for anybody to really say no to her. Which brings me to another interesting point about the first half of this book, which is that Butler, as a Black American woman, interrogates a lot of what it means to be black, to be a woman. She kind of turns all of these power signifiers on their head, so that the fact that Shuri is a child, apparently visually, but is more powerful than all of these human adults around her, and the fact that her melanin allows her to walk in the sun while others of her species cannot go outside in the daylight, and the fact that all females of her species are more powerful than the males. All of these things kind of contribute to a sense of how arbitrary a lot of power relationships are, but also reminds you that many things that we take for granted as cultural in humans might be based on biological conditions. Like the inner, for example, are absolutely not monogamous. And the humans that they gather around them are in these sort of polyamorous situations where they often have a human partner, but all of them have some kind of erotic connection to the inner, the vampire character, who then also will mate with members of the opposite sex within their own community. Now, I will say my favourite part of the book was kind of discovering the lore, and I won't say more about it because if you read it, it's interesting to discover both what is Shuri's backstory, what is her situation, why is she in danger, how did these creatures, the inner, work, how have they hidden themselves from humanity. You discover her alongside her since she has this amnesia, and that's a great device that Butler's using. As the book goes on, these themes of power and gender and race shift, and you encounter things that are maybe closer to what we think of as like American narratives of racial supremacy, but within this inner community. I'm not going to say more about that, but I will say that as the second half of the book unfolded, I enjoyed it a little less, although I still think it was a successful novel, and I would recommend it, especially to anybody who is interested in kind of alternative takes or twists on vampire genres. Now, Butler writes a good character, and she also writes very visually. There are scenes of violence and conflict that are very vivid in this book. She can definitely construct a narrative and carry you along with it. I did find personally that Shorey's kind of internal emotional monologue was a little bit pushy at times. Like, it'll describe an event and then she'll almost push the reader to feel what the narrator is feeling, was my experience of it. And at times, especially in the last section of the book, I found that a little unlikable, a little heavy-handed, I will say. There's also some expositional sections that are a little heavy-handed, but on the whole, I think it was a really good novel, and I'd be interested to hear if you've read it. If you have read it, what do you think about it? Would you recommend any other books by Butler? I've only read Dawn, apart from this one. Be interested to hear your opinion on this or any book it reminds you of. Please jump in the comments and start a conversation. Like and subscribe if you found this interesting, and maybe I'll see you again.